Welcome back, everyone. You know how much we all love those kind of aha moments in history, those times where you stumble upon a story you've never heard before and think, wow, how did I not know about this?
Absolutely. It's like finding a hidden gem, a fascinating piece of the past that really sheds light on a bigger picture.
Exactly. And you, our amazing listeners, you really hit the jackpot with this one. You sent over some material on a skirmish during the American Revolution, something I have to admit I'd never even heard of.
The Battle of Great Canebrake, December 22nd, 1775.
Yep, 1775. And it happened right here in what's now Greenville County, South Carolina. Talk about local history coming alive. So today we're doing a deep dive into this battle, unpacking all the details.
It is a perfect example of how these lesser-known events, these sort of forgotten skirmishes, can actually reveal so much about the dynamics of the Revolution, especially in the South.
For sure. And just to set the stage, this wasn't a typical Continental Army versus Redcoats kind of thing. We're talking about the South Carolina backcountry, where there was a whole lot of tension brewing. You had folks who were fiercely loyal to the British Crown, the Loyalists, and they were directly opposed to the Patriot government down in Charlestown.
Right, and what makes it even more interesting is that both sides, the Patriots and Loyalists, knew that having the Cherokee on their side was crucial. The Cherokee Nation held a lot of sway in this region, and whoever could gain their favor would have a big advantage.
So you've got this three-way dynamic going on, and in the middle of it all is this Battle of Great Canebrake, which, spoiler alert, ended in an American victory.
A Patriot victory, to be precise.
Yeah.
And lucky for us, we have this document and account that details the Battle of Great Canebrake. It lays out what led to the fight, how it played out, and the fallout afterwards.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. What was the spark, the incident that lit the fuse for this whole thing?
Well, as you mentioned, the upcountry of South Carolina was like a powder keg, this mix of Patriots and Loyalists ready to blow. And what really seemed to set things off was this wagon train.
A wagon train. What was so special about this wagon train?
It was carrying about 2,000 pounds of lead.
Lead.
Okay.
So not gold, not silver, but lead.
Yeah, lead. But think about it. This is 1775. Lead meant ammunition. It was absolutely vital. And this particular shipment was meant for the Cherokee, a strategic move by the Patriot government in Charlestown to secure their alliance.
Ah, so it was more about who controlled the resources, the materials needed for war.
Precisely. Now, a Loyalist captain named Patrick Cunningham, he intercepted this wagon train.
I bet that didn't go over well with the Patriots.
Not at all. They tried to get it back, but Cunningham and his men, they held their ground. It was a bold move, a direct challenge to the Patriots' authority.
So how did the folks in Charlestown react to this? I mean, having their plans to arm the Cherokee thwarted like that.
They didn't mess around. They decided they needed to put down this Loyalist uprising once and for all. So they gathered a pretty large force, a militia, and put Colonel Richard Richardson in charge.
Sounds like they were going all in on this.
They were. And you can imagine for the Loyalists, seeing this massive Patriot force coming at them, well, their options were pretty limited. They were already outnumbered, so they started retreating.
Trying to avoid a direct confrontation.
Exactly. They pulled back towards the Piedmont, hoping to regroup. By late December, Richardson, he'd managed to amass a huge force. We're talking maybe 5,000 men.
Wow, 5,000. That's a serious army.
And he'd even captured a few important Loyalist leaders. Things weren't looking good for Cunningham and his men. But here's where things get really interesting. Richardson, he decides to send a smaller detachment after them, about 1,300 men led by Major William Thomson.
Wait, hold on. They have this big advantage. Why split their forces and risk chasing after a retreating enemy?
Good question. And it gets even more intriguing when you consider where Richardson sent them, straight into what was basically Cherokee territory.
So not just a risky pursuit, but heading into potentially hostile territory as well. This Major Thompson, though, he must have been quite a character. I mean, even his nickname is Danger Thompson.
Chuckles. Danger Thompson. You've got to wonder how he got that one. And picture this. His men, they had to march 25 miles overnight. In terrible weather, too. Cold rain, even some snow flurries.
Yikes. Not exactly a walk in the park.
Not at all. Meanwhile, the Loyalists, they'd found a spot to hunker down, try to get out of the elements. They'd hold up in what was described as a break of canes.
A break of canes. What exactly is that? Sounds pretty dense.
It is. The source actually tells us exactly what kind of canes these were. Arundinaria gigantea, a type of native bamboo. So imagine this thick, almost impenetrable wall of tall cane. It would have provided some cover, but also made it hard to see what was coming.
So the Loyalists are in this dense thicket, freezing and wet, probably feeling pretty miserable. How on earth did Thompson and his men manage to sneak up on them?
Well, the heavy rain had soaked the ground, which would have helped muffle the sound of the approaching Patriots. But here's the kicker. The Loyalists actually helped mask the noise themselves. They were burning cane stalks to try and stay warm.
Ironic, their attempt to stay warm ended up making them more vulnerable.
Exactly. The crackling fire masked the sound of Thompson's men getting closer. So, almost by accident, the Patriots were able to surround the Loyalist camp completely. The element of surprise was total.
Okay, so the stage is set. The Patriots have the Loyalists surrounded. What happens when they attack?
It all went down at dawn, a complete surprise attack.
Mhm.
And the Loyalists, well, they were totally caught off guard. Their leader, Captain Cunningham, he made a pretty hasty retreat, let's just say.
What do you mean hasty? Did he surrender?
Not quite. According to the account, he managed to escape. But he did it on an unsaddled horse and apparently without his breeches.
No breaches. That's a detail you don't forget.
Right. As he was running away, he was yelling for his men to shift for himself. Not exactly a rallying cry.
So much for inspiring leadership. So the Patriots, they achieved their objective, right? They got back the lead for the Cherokee.
Oh yeah, they got the lead back.
Plus, they captured a whole bunch of Loyalists, something like 130 men.
130 men captured. That's a big blow. Did the Loyalists put up much of a fight? Were there a lot of casualties?
Surprisingly few. It seems only about 5 or 6 Loyalists were killed. The account even says that Major Thomson had to hold back his own men from harming the prisoners. You can imagine, feelings were running high.
So the Patriots win. They've routed the Loyalists, captured their leader, and taken a bunch of prisoners.
Yeah.
A decisive victory, right?
In that moment, it certainly seemed like it. But then came the aftermath. And let's just say, Mother Nature had a few surprises in store. Remember all that rain and snow we talked about?
Yeah, miserable weather.
Well, the day after the battle, a massive snowstorm hit the area.
Oh, wow. Talk about adding insult to injury. It was a huge blizzard. Totally unexpected. And remember, these militiamen, they weren't professional soldiers with fancy gear and winter clothing.
I can imagine. So this sudden snowstorm must have been a real shock to the system.
Absolutely. The account says that a lot of the Patriot soldiers suffered from exposure. Some got frostbite, and others had injuries that never fully healed.
So even though they'd won the battle, they were now facing a whole new enemy, the elements.
Exactly. Because of this brutal snowstorm right after the fighting, the whole event became known as the Snow Campaign. It just goes to show that even when you think you've won, nature can throw a curveball.
A chilling reminder of the harsh realities these soldiers faced. Now, Colonel Richardson, he thought this victory at Great Canebrake would bring peace to the backcountry. Did it?
Well, he thought so at the time, but it didn't quite work out that way. Remember how both sides wanted the Cherokee on their side?
Yeah, that three-way power struggle.
Well, despite the Patriots winning at Great Canebrake, the Cherokee ended up siding with the Loyalists.
Oh, wow. So the victory might have actually backfired.
It's possible. It might have pushed the Cherokee into the arms of the Loyalists, escalating the conflict. And this wasn't just a little skirmish anymore. It became a full-blown civil war on the frontier, much more brutal and widespread.
That's a great example of how even what seems like a small, localized event can have ripple effects that change the course of history.
Absolutely. So for those listening who might be in the area, can you actually visit the site of the Battle of Great Canebrake?
Yeah, if I wanted to go see where this all happened, is there a marker or anything?
The exact location is a bit of a mystery. We know it happened near the Reedy River, about 7 miles southwest of Simpsonville, South Carolina.
So somewhere in that general area.
Right. And if you're in that area, there is a state historical marker on Fork Shoals Road, south of Old Hundred Road, which is also County Road 565.
So at least there's a place to go and commemorate the event.
There is. There's also an interesting tidbit about another marker. Back in 1941, the Behathland-Butler chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, they put up a marker on South Harrison Bridge Road, north of State Highway 418.
Interesting. So there used to be 2 markers. What happened to that one?
It got removed at some point. Unfortunately, the details about why are a bit murky.
Another little history mystery. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the Battle of Great Canebrake, what are the big takeaways here? What should we, as history enthusiasts, really remember about this event?
Well, first off, it shows us just how complex the American Revolution really was. There were all these divisions within the colonies, folks who were passionately on different sides. It wasn't a simple us versus them story.
Right, it challenges that simple narrative we often get in history books.
Exactly. And then there's the human element. These soldiers on both sides, they faced incredible hardships. Not just the fighting, but the harsh conditions, the bitter cold, the sudden snowstorms. It's a reminder that war isn't just about battles. It's about endurance and sheer survival.
And let's not forget that hilarious image of Captain Cunningham making his escape sans breeches. Sometimes history gives you those little moments of absurdity.
Absolutely. But perhaps the biggest takeaway is that sometimes a victory isn't what it seems. The Patriots won at Great Canebrake, but it might have pushed the Cherokee to side with the Loyalists, escalating the conflict.
A reminder that unintended consequences are a real force in history.
Exactly. So to our listeners, I'd pose this question. Think about other times in history where a seemingly small or localized event had these huge unforeseen repercussions. And if you're fascinated by this story, I encourage you to dig deeper into the American Revolution, especially here in the South. There are so many hidden gems waiting to be discovered.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we explore the fascinating and often surprising twists and turns of history.
Until next time.